Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to another Capital Gains Tax Solutions Mastermind, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the deferred sales trust is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated assets, defer capital gains tax on primary homes, businesses, cryptocurrency, stock, so you can not only defer capital gains tax, but also create and preserve more wealth at optimal timing. Excited to talk today. The subject of today's mastermind is deferred sales trust, unlocking the power of a DST for wealth preservation and tax optimization. If you want to take action, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com right now. But in the meantime, I am joined by some of the best one of the best financial minds with investments as it pertains to financial investments, as well as real estate and entrepreneurial ventures. Please welcome with me, Jake Meller. Jake, how are we doing today?
Brett, it's another fabulous day. It's Friday. We're right before the weekend, and not a better time than to mark down those items that we need to get started with for the next week. And some of those items have to do with the deferred sales trust, what we can do when we're facing perhaps the largest transaction of our life, and how we can work through that without having to pay the government their share of the profits before it's needed.
Yep, absolutely. And so that's why we're here, and to hopefully give you some freedom and some flexibility when it comes to your investments, beyond just like the traditional 1031 exchange, beyond just maybe traditional installment sales, and beyond maybe things like opportunity zones. You're looking for more flexibility, more diversification, less having to hold into investments for longer periods of time. And so that is the subject of today's mastermind. And so, how do you unlock the power of the DST? Well, I think the first step one, is understanding what the deferred sales trust is. It's not only a place where you can defer capital gains tax on the sale of assets, it's also a place where you have flexibility with the investments. So one of the best reasons to use the deferred sales trust is because not all time is created equal. And what do I mean by that? Well, guess what? This last year of investing has been challenging. Interest rates have been challenging. A lot of moving parts have been challenging. And so we would say this last year of time has been maybe perhaps not an optimal time to be investing. If you had bought at the wrong time, or you're in an investment, a real estate asset 1031 exchange trade, and now you're having to overpay. Now, on the other side, it could be a great time, for certain assets that have dropped in value. Perhaps the stock market's down, right? For investments that you want to put in. Perhaps, CDs are up, right? Or treasury bills are up. I mean, so time is reflective of the investment you're trying to go into. And so you want a vehicle that gives you the flexibility to go into multiple different assets at different time. And the one thing that deferred sales trust does amazing is that if it had its specialty, it would be a flexible investment vehicle that is tax deferred, and we have to think of it like efficiently tax optimized, so that it's deferring capital gains tax, it's deferring income tax, and as well, these investments that are inside of the trust are typically are growing and not being taxed at the trust level, because it's able to expense what it owes to you. In fact, Jake, let's explain how the accrual of a promissory note of the trust allows the trust to be very efficient. Why don't you touch on that, and then we'll keep going here.
Absolutely. I want you to think of the accrual or the ongoing interest that perhaps you don't necessarily have to pay right away, but over time it's accruing, is an expense. Or you could even consider it to be a phantom expense, like depreciation or amortization or any of those other items that sometimes on your taxes don't necessarily track money movements, but from a tax perspective are beneficial to you because they are offsetting potential gain that you might have within the trust. Essentially, I've heard you say, Brett, on a couple of different phone calls with clients, that the trust incurs a lot of these expenses, right? Operational expenses, what have you, so that the investments inside of the trust can earn more and not have a tax ramification. It's one of the efficiencies of working with a deferred sales trust, that it has an associated promissory note attached to it based on the assets that you originally moved inside, that you should either pay interest on every year or allow the interest to accrue every year. Whether you pay it or whether it accrues inside of the trust, it's marked or it's booked as an expense.
Very well said. And essentially, that what that means is we're optimizing the tax flow for not only you by deferring that capital gains tax, and by the way, the income tax as well. We can defer that sort of like an IRA or 401k, but within the trust itself, even if it has trades and gains, right? It's likely, depending on how much gains and how much trades, able to just be offset by what the trust owes to you. And so as a quick reminder, the deferred sale trust is a structured installment sale that owes you, let's just say you sold a $10 million asset and you were to pay $4 million of tax. Instead of paying the $4 million of tax, all $10 million goes into the trust and it owes you, let's just say at an 8% interest, which is $800,000 per year of interest, 10 million plus the 800,000 per year. But if you're not taking the $800,000, or even if you were taking it in payment at the trust level, it's able to expense it. Think of it like a paper loss, right? For any income and expenses that are coming in. And so this is a powerful way for the trust to grow in an optimized way, and also for you who may be deferring some capital gains tax and some income tax to defer and grow. And so that's the power of the deferred sales trust. It's not only able to help you optimize your tax, it's also going to help you to create more wealth, because what the next step is to invest the funds at optimal timing. So Jake, I'm curious, how are you feeling about the securities market right now? What's your take on the stock market and just the overall, liquid investment opportunities that you're seeing?
In general, in the stock market, we've had somewhat of a rebound compared to the last couple of years. However, we're still experiencing a lot of volatility. Some of our clients who have had immediate or unforeseen needs to liquidate their assets in the stock market have had to do so, sadly, at moments when it wasn't the most convenient for them. That is also why a lot of our DST clients have assets that are in the market, but also have other assets that do not fluctuate with the market. They have a zero correlation to what happens in the market because they are structured debts, they are businesses, or sometimes they are direct placement programs or direct private equity investments here in the country or out of the country, all of which provide an additional and needed diversification to the volatility that many people are experiencing when only invested in the stock market.
Excellent. So let's get real life here. Let's share some stories of some clients that have used the DST and have used it in a tax optimized way. I was looking for my pamphlet here, but maybe it's over there. I might find it. Actually, I do have it. I will find it in here in just a second when Jake starts talking. So let's talk about a client who sold a high-end primary home in Palo Alto, California, and he moved to Nevada, established residency, right? So he sold a house that had the majority of his wealth, also had a lot of debt on this asset. It was not cash flowing. In fact, it was what we refer to as he felt like real estate rich and let's say cash flow poor or cash flow light. And so he's saying, wow, I have all this wealth that I built up. I've lived in this house. My kids are gone. I would like to move it to Nevada, move out of California and establish residency next to my family, travel a little more. And I'm in this big old house next to Stanford University. I'm going, why am I here when I could sell it and also have some debt that I want to pay off? And so he was able to use the deferred sales trust to not only help him sell the house, but defer the tax. And with that difference of wealth, he was able to invest it and then start receiving income. But guess what? He waited until he moved to Nevada, which established residency. Now you might be asking, well, does that mean he doesn't have to pay capital gains tax to California? No, not at all. If he dips into principal, he has to pay capital gains tax to California. But as long as he lives off the interest payments, guess what? That's just the state in which he resides in, right? And so this is a real world example of being able to get debt free, get diversified. By the way, all these funds were 100% liquid. Okay. So he's able to access the capital should he need it, pay tax as he receives it, versus staying in a house and a property in a marketplace with a lot of debt, no cash flow, not serving his needs in his lifestyle, what he was ready to do. And that was moving, that was flexibility, that was debt freedom, that was cash flow. And so the deferred sales trust for him did some like four or five major, freedoms. And that's what we love about the deferred sales trust is it provides not only tax deferral, but it provides the freedoms and flexibility to optimize his wealth preservation and growth. Jake, you want to add anything to that or any insights from that story?
Commonly this same issue that this individual had, you talked about cash flow. It's a liquidity issue. And whether it's their business, whether they are farmers, or like this individual, all of his, not all, but a large portion of his net worth was locked up inside of this house. It was a house that he previously lived in. I think that this is a very positive scenario where the client, through proper planning, was able to change his domicile to a tax favorable state rather than a CALA taxation state. And through the use of the deferred sales trust, was able to essentially maintain his net worth rather than losing his net worth to taxes prematurely. And so I'm kind of saying the same things that you said, Brett, but in slightly different words. I think that helps a lot of our listeners just to kind of connect on how this might relate to them. I do have now that you shared a success story, I have a horror story. I don't know if we're ready for that. I mean,
we're ready for it. Let's go.
We're not that
not
close
Halloween yet, but we're ready for
it. But sadly, there was a family in Texas, parents of which were very similar to your individual in California. They didn't have the cash flow. They had most of their assets tied up in real estate. They are dirt farmers, which could mean a lot of different things. The word dirt farmer just means that you have crops, you have agriculture, you have animals, but your largest asset is the dirt, or all your value, all of your net worth is tied up in the land. These individuals, had they utilized the deferred sales trust, they would have had a completely different story. Because they were not presented with something like this or other estate planning measures, they ended up with a horror story, in the sense that they died, mom and dad, and because their estate was so great, they incurred what is known as the highest tax that anybody can receive, which is the death tax or the estate tax, which is 40%. And as I mentioned, they had a liquidity issue, just like this Palo Alto individual had a liquidity issue, but their liquidity issue was exacerbated because of the death of mom and dad who owned all the land. Exacerbated because the government, when you owe them taxes, and it's because of an estate, they don't give you all the leeway that they might if it's just business income taxes or something of that nature. Literally, they can come and knock on your door and say, within 9 months, you must pay, or we will seize everything. And that happened, Brett. Now, sometimes land, you can't easily sell it. There's not always a ready-made market. And so they had additional liquidity issues. They couldn't just sell their land, especially since the potential buyers kind of saw what was going on and they took advantage of the moment. And none of them were really forthcoming on saying, hey, I want to buy now, or any of that nature. Essentially, what happened is they couldn't sell the farm, the family farm, for the price that it was worth. In fact, they had to do a fire sale because of lack of proper planning and lack of legal support and assistance. Those 9 months sped on by, and they had to do a fire sale, Brett. They had to sell their property at 45% of value. Their taxes were still 40% of value. They lost everything and literally had enough left over to pay the attorneys. And that was it. So that is a horror story of how they didn't want to sell, but they were forced to sell because of proper estate planning. They didn't have anything in place. They didn't have the life insurance necessary to pay the taxes. They didn't have a deferred sales trust. They didn't think to sell the property prior to passing away, or to, they'd heard, hey, my kids get a step up in basis when I die. And that's true, except that doesn't cover the estate tax. And so all of these things dominoed, and what was a very dirt rich family ended up being a very poor family in every sense of the word after parents passed away. And so that's a horror story because of proper estate planning. They didn't review all the tax implications based upon death. They thought everything would be okay. And parents left all the planning to the kids. The kids were not prepared. Kids received the notices. Nothing happened for 9 months. And then the government was going to force them. The government forced them to do a fire sale, and they ended up with nothing. The government won. The government got their taxes, the attorneys got their money, and the heirs got nothing.
Yeah, that is a real life horror story. And that's the last thing we want anyone who's listening or watching this to have to endure. Can you imagine? Can you picture this? You've built your wealth, your business, you've owned your assets for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years just to see it, wiped out by something like this, where it's a state tax or it's not proper planning or it's not proper understanding of the difference between capital gains tax on a stepped up basis and what the deferred sales trust doing, which is move it outside of the taxable estate so you can eliminate that estate tax. So the deferred sales trust, it's so powerful because we can optimize your wealth, your estate, by removing funds outside the taxable estate upon a sale. By the way, this leads into like the steps of the deferred sales trust. If you were to use this, what could they have done? The Monday morning quarterback, this is what we would have done. We would have sat down with him, let's say 5 years ago. We would have properly planned the deferred sales trust to be set up. We would have found a buyer to purchase the asset. We would have sold the asset, but not to that buyer, to the trust first. And then ultimately the trust would sell it to that buyer and the cash would be in there. And the owners, the family, would have a promissory note of which the capital and the equity is outside of the taxable estate. And by the way, diversifying their equity as well, right? Not being tied to a real estate market or even a illiquid type of perhaps crops and farming market where they're selling and are having to force a sale. They can probably get a higher price, better terms, but they can diversify their wealth. And then the kids have no estate tax. There's no 40% estate tax. And so the steps to doing this is, number one, sitting down with Jake or me collectively, going through the deferred sales trust. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to connect with me. You can also connect with Jake by going to strategictaxsolutions.com. But essentially just having a conversation, and it's a no cost, no obligation conversation. And we'll just see if it can potentially be a good fit for you. The pros and cons of the deferred sales trust, the fees, the disclosures, the legal track record, the lifetime audit defense. Well, let's assume that's a great fit for you and you're feeling good about it. You have at least $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. Then we're simply going to work with your professionals, whether they be M&A advisors, real estate professionals. I'm also a commercial real estate broker as well. We have a team across the country to help you exit assets. Jake and I have lots of connections with M&A attorneys, business brokers across the country. Essentially, we can help connect with you. We have an extensive network. So whatever you need, we are here to help. But Billy, it's about building the team. Once you have a clear vision on what the challenge is and where you want to be with your wealth and your family and your time and your energy, then it's about finding the strategy or strategies collectively, plus building the team to execute on those strategies. And then it's just about executing. We add specific language that goes into the contracts of every single one of the either purchase and sale agreement or an addendum. Even the listing agreement we can put it into. We're going to weave it in there so everyone understands that this is the plan, so that we properly document everything. So we avoid what's called constructive receipt, which is essentially going too far down the road, meaning you basically have taken the capital or the cash, and it's therefore the deferred sales trust is not eligible. So we do everything that's intricate timeline, all built in with our transaction coordination team to make sure you have this option. But by the way, if the deal doesn't close, you don't owe us any money. For some reason, you decide not to use the deferred sales trust, you don't owe us any money. We don't get paid unless it closes, unless you use the trust. But it does take planning. It does take time and energy to spend with us to make sure we're all on the same page. We build the team, we build the strategy, and then we close. Right? We close into typically like a TD Ameritrade or a Charles Schwab or a large bank, and then the funds can be invested. Now, you might say, well, Brett, what if I'm an entrepreneur? Fantastic. If you're an entrepreneur, guess what? You can use the deferred sales trust to not only exit your multi-million-dollar businesses or assets, but then it can partner with you, invest back into your own deal. But you might say, well, you know what, Brett? I'm an entrepreneur, but I want to maybe, relax for a couple of years. I've been building this business for 10 or 15 years. Can the funds be invested into passive deals while I wait? Absolutely. Now, in that scenario, if you're planning on to get something back in that you want to be doing, then we're going to stay in liquid investments. That's really important, right? And these investments can be with someone like Jake Miller, who's a certified financial planner, who can invest these funds in prudent investments based upon your risk tolerance. But you might say, Brett, I'm not maybe as hot or as comfortable in the stock market. Can we go with some real estate? Absolutely. And the key is we want to diversify, keep some liquidity, and build a customized wealth plan with the DST. Jake, do you want to add or subtract any of that?
Yes. Now, actually, we have another question that has come in, and I think it's a timely question. We talked about helping them exit real estate and a number of different things. This individual is asking, what about the sale of a business or a partnership interest in a business for purposes of retirement? So, Brett, what kind of scenarios have we helped people out with in the past? Or what would it look like should someone approach us today and ask, hey, I would like to retire and I own a business, or I at least have partnership shares in a business. How can the DST be of benefit?
Great question. And so the main question is, what about the sale of a business for purposes of retirement, And I think this is a great case study because what the deferred sales trust is so great at doing is helping you take a highly appreciated asset, such as a business, and where typically a lot of the entrepreneurs and business owners we work with have built, let's say, at least about 80% of their wealth, and it's going to help bring about 25 to 50% more of the net proceeds into a trust versus being paid to the IRS. Okay. And so we're deferring this tax for a period of time, typically 10-year increments. And every 10 years, you can renew for 10 years, renew, you can pass it to kids and keep it going. And essentially you live off the interest. You can also take principal. So we're delaying the tax, right? But you're going to have an extra proceeds. And so a real life example of this was for a dentist in New Jersey. New Jersey, by the way, along with New York, California, and Illinois, they were some of the highest tax states. And so for this gentleman, it was about a $2 million practice, and it represented about 80% of their net worth. And he was looking about $700,000 to $800,000 of tax if he doesn't use the DST. But if he uses the DST, an extra $700,000 to $800,000 deferred, so a full 2 million or so in the trust. And so for him, he said, you know what, Brett, this represents a lot more cash flow every single month. This represents me being a great steward with my wealth. This represents the opportunity to spend more time traveling and enjoying the things I really want to do. And the most important thing, he said, this represents time for me. Because guess what, Brett, if I were to have $1.2 million net versus 2 million with the trust, guess what? I can sell now my business and I don't have to continue to work for another 5 years to increase the value to say, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, 3 million, just to net the same amount that I'll be living off of the cash flow. And so the biggest piece here is for those who want to retire, this gives you time back to sell at a price perhaps that is maybe lower than you thought you needed or wanted for retirement. But with the DST, it's like getting a 25 to 50% boost almost in your price, because what? Your net proceeds are going to be not net of tax paid, but tax deferred. And so I think that's the most powerful thing that we would love for anyone who's considering selling a business for purposes of a retirement, is the ability to get your time back to do the things that you really want to do. Time with family, time to give back, maybe time to start another business, time to invest in real estate, time to just enjoy your time with your grandkids. Whatever it is that you want to do, it really is up to you, but the trust gives you that flexibility. Jake, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I actually just had a conversation similar to this yesterday, in the sense that one of my clients who has been an entrepreneur, who escalated from being an entrepreneur to a business owner who developed, created new and additional products and commercialized or created the market for those products, and then vertically integrated. So he's doing wonderful things with his business. The next step for him is to gain back his time by allowing other people like him, who are also entrepreneurs and who are also business owners, who are developing their business lines and their products and their markets, to invest in them. And that way he can gain back some of his time by not having to work in his business as much, by letting other people work in their businesses and investing in them. That's the whole idea of investing in the stock market or investing in direct placement programs or investing in your own real estate, where there's other people who are doing the property management, all these other things, right? And so there's a common shift amongst your career of income, of making money, that you work really hard. You figure out what your niche is. You develop your niche. You then develop all the different ways of how you can make money in that niche. And then eventually you duplicate yourself. You find your doppelganger and you step away. Or you sell your business and you completely step away. That allows you to, at this point, come back and invest in people just like you were, or people in other industries. In this sense, Brett, somebody who wants to kind of sell their shares in a business that they might have been a general partner in, or that they might have owned completely themselves, they're able to not necessarily sell off into the sunset, but as you mentioned, gain back their time by taking the gross proceeds of what the value of their shares in that business were and invest that, diversify their investments and invest in areas that allow them to continue to earn money. It could be a replacement of income or preservation of capital, depending on what their goals and objectives are, depending on what it looks like to sell off into the sunset in retirement, right? For some people, it means I want to spend all my money. For others, it means I want to live off of the interest only and preserve my capital to leave a legacy to my children. Whatever your goals are, the deferred sales trust doesn't have to go away. And it can actually help you tax efficiently through that process.
Very well said. And so who does this deferred sales trust work for? What are the eligible assets for the deferred sales trust transactions? Well, we'll start with the business owner, right? It works for a business owner, and it can be an S Corp, it can be a C Corp, it can be an LLC. Extra benefits for C Corps, those can tend to be higher because you've had extra benefits of tax deferral. It's their tax treatment during the holding of the company. And so you've seen, for example, in California, some C Corps exiting as much as 67%, depending on how the sale is structured, of the proceeds, which is just incredible, or of the gain, right? Which a lot of clients, that means of the proceeds as well. But that is huge, right? Whereas it also works for, partnerships. It works for, of course, S Corp, C Corp, LLC. So it works for any business you could think of. You could be a professional practice owner. You could be a chiropractor, orthodontist, optometrist. You could be a tech entrepreneur. It could be a tech company. It could be also works for stock, public or private stock. Works for cryptocurrency. Okay. Works for primary homes, works for commercial real estate. It works for ag land. It works for really any asset of any kind. Here's the key. It needs to have $1 million net proceeds and $1 million gain. That's what helps it to be eligible. It doesn't mean you can't have two at $500,000 each. There are exceptions to the rule, and it's not like an IRS rule that it doesn't work. We just have found that the return on investment and the costs and the fees that are associated, we want to make sure that's large enough, there's a big enough tax pain to make sense of the complexities and the cost of the trust. And so those are some of the assets that it's eligible for. And those are some of the things that you want to be thinking about as it pertains to the deferred sales trust. So let's move into the next part of the talk, which is the key considerations and potential risks. Right. So let's highlight some potential risk associated with the deferred sales trust. The first one that comes to mind has to do with audits, right? Or the IRS, or what's the track record, right? And so it's very important to understand that with any tax deferral strategy or anything that you're doing with wealth and investments, there's a level of risk that's involved. Now, the good news with the deferred sales trust is that so far, over 27 years, there's been zero findings and zero changes in over 24 IRS audits. These are state and federal, scattered throughout the country, and some deals as large as $100 million in California that have been audited, and no change, no findings. And also, as a part of that, those risks that are involved with audits and potential interest charges on if something was improperly done. There's something called an audit defense that's provided for every deferred sales trust if you work with us, with the tax attorneys who created the structure. And that lifetime audit defense is a part of the one-time fee, which, by the way, is about 1.5% of the sales price on the first million, 1.25 and anything above that. And that is the one-time legal cost to the tax attorneys who set this up. The ongoing fees, as a trustee, that's our role here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and financial advisor like Jake Miller, who was just talking a minute ago, about 1.5% to 2% on the actual net proceeds into the trust. So after you pay off the debt, commissions, closing costs, one-time legal fee, whatever's left over, let's just say that happened to be $1 million, for example, it'd be about 15 to 20,000 that the trust would pay to the professionals who are managing the trust on a yearly recurring basis. There's some other miscellaneous fees, and that's part of why we like to see $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. But I think it's really important to understand that should you be audited, and that is a risk, that there's lifetime audit protection associated with the trust. Jake, do you want to add anything to potential risk associated with the DSTs and anything else about kind of investing at this point?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to just add a little bit in regards to other firms that have offered audit protection or something of that nature. Sometimes simply means that they have an insurance policy. And then maybe some attorney somewhere might look into your case and might support you because there's money behind it to help. They don't really have any skin in the game to make sure that you actually succeed. Whereas the audit protection that is provided here, or the audit assurance, the law firm that you actually pay to build the trust, to create the trust, to make sure that everything is done correctly, they themselves represent you should this get looked at or scrutinized by the IRS or any other taxing entity. And in fact, the track record of them doing so, there has been over 22 reviews, notices, or audits done on the deferred sales trust specifically, all of which this law firm personally represented each and every client and is currently batting 1,000. That means that they have 100% track record, and every single time that it's come before the IRS, it has had a positive outcome for the client. So big difference in what some people offer as far as audit assurance and what you are receiving with the deferred sales trust, what your money goes towards. This law firm does that because they have an additional incentive in maintaining a perfect track record or history. And so anyway, just kind of a difference between what is being offered here and what other people offer. I think that is important and critical, that whether you are selling a business, whether you are selling your real estate, whether you are selling your personal residence, whether you're trying to save a failed 1031, all of these different items that are eligible as far as a transaction goes into the deferred sales trust, you have financial advisors, you have a trusted trustee, and you have a law firm that are backing you and supporting you every step of the way.
Absolutely. And of course, we're maybe biased when we're saying this, but we do think we're the best at what we do because we're so passionate about doing it very, very well. We're focused like a laser on this deferred sales trust and providing a great outcome for you and your family should you want to use it. And what we're talking about here is how to mitigate deferred sales trust risks, right? And make informed decisions. You want to make sure you're making deliberate, informed decisions, as Jake Miller would say, that it's not rushed, that you understand fully what is being said. Everything is fully transparent. And that is so, so important. I remember I got my knee surgery for my ACL. I played basketball in college and I hurt my knee. And so I had to get a surgeon to repair the knee. And I remember just walking into the surgeon's office, not being sure, how many surgeries this gentleman had done, what his track record was and what the outcome has been for some patients. And so with some questions, I was able to determine that he had done, over 1,000 surgeries. And number two, he had done Chris Webber, a Sacramento Kings Hall of Fame basketball player. His knee, and Ruthie Bolton is a gold medalist for the U.S. women's basketball team. And I'm going, okay, so if they've done it there and they've been successful, and this gentleman also too his actual name was Dr. Eric Hayden. So if you've ever seen speed skating in the 80s, he was a gold medalist for the USA. Amazing athlete himself. And so with that, I had the confidence to see that, yes, you're going to I can have surgery. You're the specialist. You're the expert. Fantastic. Likewise, you want to make sure that the attorneys you're working with, the trustee you're working with, the financial advisor you're working with, they have the extensive experience and what we like to say, the 10,000 hours of every little thing that could come up, right? So that you can mitigate risk with the DST and so you can make informed decisions as it pertains to compliance, as it pertains to reporting, as it pertains to potential audits. And that's why we really encourage you to ask those questions, make sure you're making informed decisions, which leads us into the next
Well,
thought here.
Brett,
Go ahead, Jake. Thought there?
before we go on to the next, we actually have a guest here. Jessica from my team has been communicating with Darlene a little bit and was able to help her get logged in. Darlene is the individual that had the question about partnership interest or selling her business and retiring. But Darlene, I don't know if you can maybe explain your situation a little bit more so that we can provide you with a more direct answer. Oh, you need to turn yourself off mute. I sometimes do that.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I apologize. This is probably the second Zoom meeting I've done. So, I am in a partnership and I am going to be 62 in January and I'm looking to retire. And, I haven't informed them yet that I'm going to retire, but I have, I'm a third, we're a third, and a third. There's three of us. And then we also own a building together, which will be paid off next March as well. So the asset of the building probably is around $1 million plus to sell. I'm not sure in regards to the how we'll dissolve our partnership.
What kind of partnership is it? What industry are you in?
We are in a design furniture store industry, and we we do maybe $1.8 million to $2 million a year in sales.
Okay.
We
So
have
there are
maybe,
assets.
pardon
Sorry,
me.
I was going to say there are two assets right now that you've mentioned. You've got the building, that's one, and then your shares in the partnership of the furniture business.
Correct. And we actually never dispute. So the setup of the business isn't set up like it should be correctly. So basically, the only paperwork we have that shows that we're a third, and a third is our tax return.
Okay. What state are you in?
Iowa.
All right. Well, we can likely introduce you to an attorney that can help you through the process as far as coming to an agreement with your partners on a sales price, or at least some of the contracts, some of the legal paperwork that you're missing outside of the tax return in order for you all to come to an agreement. Once you do, then it is quite possible that the deferred sales trust could be a tool that allows you to sell out of your partnership interest in both the real estate and the business and receive those into the trust. Now, one of the big qualifying questions that we always ask people, once you receive the money, what is your plan? I mean, what do you want to do with the money? Are you trying to use it, as you mentioned in the question, for retirement over a long period of time, or do you have any immediate needs for the proceeds?
I would say that no, I don't have an immediate need for the proceeds.
Okay, very good. Now, Brett, can you maybe outline as the trustee what the process is for an individual like Darlene once she has an established sales date?
Absolutely. Great. And nice to meet you, Darlene. And congratulations on the business success. And, I think they say 99% of businesses never cross $1 million of revenue, something like that. So fantastic on that success for you. And so the neat part about the deferred sales trust is that it works for not only businesses in real estate, but also works for partnerships. There's a common thing that happens that different partners have different, stages of life, different, needs for the income, different just things over a period of time. And so some of the big challenges with some of the partners is if and when they do actually go to sell. And not only that, but then do you do a 1031 exchange? And now you have to keep the whole partnership together and or do you not sell because of the tax? And so there's just multiple things that kind of can get in the way of what you're trying to accomplish. And so the neat part of the deferred sales trust is without having to force everybody to do the same thing, we can structure likely. We've got to see your details of your deal and kind of do like an MRI or an X-ray of the structure and the formation once everything is set up properly for ownership. But essentially, we could likely just sell your shares, just your portion. And let's imagine they maybe want to stay in the business, right? And they just want to buy you out for your 33%. Without having to sell the entire business, they could buy you out, is what I would first see as one option. And or the entire business is sold to a third-party buyer and your portion can go into the trust. Guess what? They could also have their own portion go into their own trust. And I say their own trust, it's actually a trust that owes them the money. They don't actually own the trust, but essentially it's a trust that's set up just to do business with them, and a trust that's set up to just do business with you. And then guess what? The third partner could do the same thing. So let me bring this all to life here. We have clients out of San Diego, 4 partners. They owned a $13 million car wash business that was also real estate, that they had a basis of about $4 million. So they're looking at about a 40% tax on the difference between 13 million and 4 million. That is a lot of money. And so for them, they wanted to defer the tax. And so guess what? Partner 1, 2, and 3, there was individual trusts set up for each of those individual partners, and they were able to exit their percentages into the trust, defer all the tax. The 4th partner, the one that was left over, they just wanted to pay their tax. And so they didn't have to, didn't change any outcome for that individual partner. And it all worked out fantastic, and they deferred the tax. And so on the second part of the question is, if and when you have real estate, guess what? You can sell that real estate, and it can be promissory note number 2, and it can be one trust. So the first trust could take your 33%. And let's just say that's worth $1 million, right? So the $1 million comes in. That's the first promissory note. And let's say the second asset you sell, let's say that's worth $1.5 million. That would be the second promissory note for $1.5 million. So the total in the trust would be about 2.5. But it'll be one trust, 2 promissory notes. Let's imagine you have some cryptocurrency or stock or a primary home or another business. The point is, every time you sell, you can move into the one trust and have multiple promissory notes that basically says it's the money's owed to you plus a rate of return, that as you receive that return, you'll pay tax over time. That is how I see it. Darlene, any questions or thoughts on that?
Well, I know that when I tell them, they're not going to be happy. So the other is determining exactly what the value is in regards to what my portion is worth. I'm not sure how to determine that. I would say that our business, there's only 5 of us. 3 of us are the owners. I have a warehouse manager, and then I have an assistant that does a little bit of selling, but helps the main. Kenan is our main designer owner. So we basically wouldn't exist if he wasn't the one doing the sales. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it sounds like, A, you guys aren't clear on the value of the business. Is that the first thing?
Yes.
Yep. So, and number 2, they might may not know or would be surprised or be upset if you want to sell and exit. Is that number 2?
Yes.
And then, well, those are really 2. So let's talk about that. Okay. So I think A, like Jake was saying, connecting with not only a good, I think a good estate planning attorney if you don't have your living trust and everything set up there, but also a good either M&A attorney who can help structure proper ownership, and or M&A advisor who could give you, or business broker, an evaluation, right? A third, and maybe you get a couple different opinions of value. So I think that would help to just say, hey, I've got these 3 opinions of value. Here's roughly based upon the EBITDA and where we're at, what the value would be. And so just establishing something that's third party, that even may have them hire that business broker or the M&A advisor to give that opinion of value. If you don't have those folks, we can connect you with, we have connections with business brokers, M&A advisors, attorneys, all of it, right? We have a network expansive. Once you establish that, hopefully you guys can come to a consensus that, hey, look, this seems like it's a fair value of that. We're 33. We have that established. And then it's just a matter of, A, do they have the cash to buy you out? or
Right.
B, are you all going to have to sell it together because, there's a third party buyer that will need to come with the cash. So those are some of the steps. Any questions on that?
No, so I have some footwork to do.
Yep.
I don't know do you have individuals you recommend in our area? Otherwise, I mean, I can reach out to others in our area for that advice, but if you have anybody in the Cedar Rapids area.
We have
We
folks cross country. Go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, we can look, though sometimes the best person for the job isn't always somebody that can sit down with you in person, but somebody that can meet with you over Zoom, as far
Okay.
as the person that has the right advice. So whether it's somebody in your local area or perhaps outside of your local area, but is a little bit more tailored, I'm thinking specifically of a tax attorney who offers very affordable rates. He is located not in your state, but he can help you from the structure standpoint on what would be best suitable based on your prior tax returns on selling your business. He's one recommendation out of several. So
Okay.
we can definitely connect you to a few people. And of course, at the end of the day, you decide who represents you legally. And it always is best if this person can represent the company and represent all three of you legally, rather than just one party.
Okay. Okay.
And it doesn't hurt to get second opinion of value, right? To say, hey, look, I am looking for some opinion of value. I'm not necessarily hiring, that business broker, that M&A, as far as the valuation of the business, right? Get a second opinion of value and just see where they come out. I think that will help you in your discussions with your business partners, because it's multiple parties, not just one, right? So I would encourage you to look at that and email Jake and I, and we're happy to connect you with the resources and see if it's a good fit.
Okay. How I have Jessica who had emailed me the link and everything. How do will she send me your email address?
We will. Yeah, we'll send it to
Okay.
you. Yeah, well,
Okay.
Jake and his team will maybe just CC and we'll get all connected here. No problem after this. Darlene, any other questions on the structure, the strategy that you're curious about, or are you feeling pretty good at this point?
No, I think I just have you say get the business structured properly. So basically I just need an attorney to do the proper paperwork so that we're set up correctly. Is that what you mean by that?
There's oftentimes a couple steps to take if you're wishing and wanting to sell your business, but usually before you're engaged with us, you already have like a letter of intent or somebody that is ready to buy. And so you've got a few steps to take in place before we can talk and we can help and we can assist, and you can join our calls every Friday, but you need to get an agreement with your partners that they're either they're going to buy you out, or the three of you together are going to sell to a third party. So there's a few discussions that need to happen before we understand who buying your shares.
Gotcha.
And when that might happen. Is it going to be next month? Is it going to be next year? These items and these details are usually formulated before we're properly engaged, but we're more than willing to send you contacts, attorneys, accountants, M&A advisors, all of the people that you need to get to the point where we come in. Okay.
So I'm anticipating having this discussion with them at the end of August is what I'm anticipating. I've got some things to put in place. So you would handle once I know. So if they're going to buy me out, then that's when we would set up the trust. I would have paperwork that says to you that they're going to buy me out for X amount of dollars.
That's a great first step. Yeah, exactly. So as soon as you have something in writing or some kind of formation of an agreement, hey, this is the LOI, or this is the purchase and sale agreement, this is what the attorney has drafted for how to propose to sell it, then we can weave in the trust language and to the contract, to an addendum. So that's kind of the steps there. But yeah, until you have something of substance, like what Jake is referring to is, it's someone's like putting the cart before the horse. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Darlene, for participating in the mastermind, and hope to see you here on Friday and help you next week. I want to encourage anyone who's listening right now, if you want to take some action and have a similar consultation or discussion like we just had with Darlene, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can also go to strategictaxsolutions.com. That's where Jake Miller is at, and I'm at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, but we work on deals together. You can also check out the new book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. It's on Amazon, by the way. Hit #1 bestseller, which is pretty cool. We're proud of that. Jake Miller is in the book. I also have a couple chapters in the book. And then we have the Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book. Pretty cool. So check that out. It's called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. And you can pick that up on Amazon. That being said, we are essentially out of time. Mr. Jake Miller, for those who want to get in touch with you, can you remind them one last time, what is the best place for them to find you?
Absolutely. strategictaxsolutions.com, strategictaxsolutions.com, or 1-800-773-1848.
Excellent. And those, again, want to find me, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Thanks so much for watching or watching the replay. Thank you for sharing too. Hopefully you're sharing this. Rate, subscribe, give that little thumbs up. That helps to increase the opportunity for more people to see this, so we can help more people exit in a way that provides some freedom and to help them build their wealth. So